Hello, I hope you're all okay. So this is the latest instalment of your Russia work. So last lesson you were supposed to have done um, the consequence of emancipation about the Zemstva and about the judicial reforms. Again, no one's emailed me about that, so I'm assuming it was all on the right, all fairly straightforward for you. Just a couple of things to quickly highlight. So the Zemstva is basically elected rural local councils, and they were kind of needed because once you got rid of serfdom and you therefore abolished the legal system and the judicial control which they had over the serfs, you needed some new way, if you like, of running local areas. And so the Zemstva were basically local councils in rural districts. Most of the seats on them were reserved for the local gentry, i.e. the landowners, so they maintained their kind of dominance. But there were some seats left over for townspeople, so we had small towns and stuff, and for peasants as well. So it was progress. It's not like Nuneaton and Bedworth Council today where everyone has the vote and it's all done that way. There was more restrictions involved. The Zemstva had quite a lot of power in terms of local issues, things like, do we need to repave this road, or do we need to extend this to here, and those sorts of issues, like prisons as well, and local kind of prisons they looked over. But all the big issues which were dealt with in the localities were still done by the governors of the regions who were appointed by the Tsar, and they had powers over things like taxation and appointing government officials, maintaining law and order, all that kind of stuff. So in many ways, the Tsar and autocracy remained in place, and of course there were no changes made to central government, so that was still very much like it had been before, with the Tsar in charge and nobody else. There are quite a few weaknesses of the Zemstva. As from the reading, a number of regions never actually received them by the time you got to 1914. The governors, as we said before, maintained most power. They also had the ability to overturn decisions made by the Zemstva if they felt, what was the quote, contrary to the laws and the general welfare of the state, which is a very kind of a vague kind of term. And as we said before, the nobility dominated them. That said, they did allow a number of liberals became involved. So, for example, you did see liberal-minded teachers and doctors, these sorts of middle-class people, I suppose, did begin to get elected onto the Zemstva. And if you read those consequences cards for the emancipation, the one by Alano Fix, I think that's how you say his name, he kind of says that the Zemstva in many ways began to undermine the Tsarist regime, kind of unintentionally, because they became a centre, if you like, for liberal change and liberal reform, and they were calling on for bigger changes further up the system. Again, this wasn't immediate, it took a while to come about, but it was a consequence. Just realised this video, I've gone a bit dark on this video for some reason. Oh well. The other stuff on here were the judicial changes. Oh, hello, Zengi. Were the judicial changes. And again, you have to do that reading about all the problems with the judiciary. So you've got things like the punishments were really severe. You have bribery. You had judges who were unqualified, didn't know the law. Some of them couldn't even read and write. The police as well. They not only did they kind of hunt down criminals, but they also prosecuted them, and they kind of gave out the punishments. The police were literally judge and jury, I suppose. There was quite a lot of bribery as well and abuse of power because people didn't get paid very much. And so the number of reforms that came in 1860, was it 64, 65? I think it's 65, were things like the judges had to be trained for 3 years, there had to be some separation between the police and the judiciary, they tried to increase the pay of the judiciary as well to reduce the bribery, and they also tried to create this equality before the law as well, so all classes were supposed to be equal before the law, because before that the serfs were kind of dealt with differently. That said, there were limitations to this, so a bit like in medieval England where the church were in charge of administering law to like the priests, well this still occurred in Tsarist times, so even after these reforms, priests were done by ecclesiastical church law and not by government. The military, they had a separate judicial system. critics of the regime and revolutionaries, they were dealt with outside this legal system. So there's still big problems after these reforms. You also, because you had the separate, they called volost courts for the freed serfs, they were still being treated differently to everybody else. So again, that equality before the law was kind of limited. Okay, so there was a quite significant local government and judicial reforms. It was a big step forward, I would say, for the judiciary, but there were still some problems. Local government as well was, again, quite a big step forward, although again, limitations. And you can see under both of these reforms how the Conservatives, the reactionaries, the landed gentry still kind of maintained control. So if you get an interpretation about Alexander's reforms and were they great or not, or were they revolutionary or whatever, you can say, well, in some ways, yes, but actually the Zemstva still showed that the local gentry still dominated. The emancipation, as we know, to all the redemptive payments and all that stuff, tried to show the nobility dominated as well. So, depending on what your conclusion is, I think I would say good start, a bit more work to do, I would say. Right, what I'd like to do for, where are we up to, Monday next week, other reforms initiated by Alexander. You will notice there's a table that looks like this, like one of yours is blank largely, okay, and what you need to do is to use the Evans and Jenkins book mainly to do about military education and censorship, okay, and what Alexander got up to in those areas. The bottom one says Financial Economics, 78 to 80 of the Holland book, Russia and its Rulers. I realise I don't have a copy here, and nor does Liz, so I'm going to pop down to college. I'm going to risk my life, if you like, to get a copy of that book, and then I'll take a photograph of those pages and I'll add it onto an email later on today. So at some point today you should get an email which will have 78 to 80 of that particular book for you. I couldn't find it anywhere in Moodle, and I think because it's a textbook that we have, and we have quite a lot of copies of it, we just never really bothered to scan it. So I'll do that for you. So for next Monday, if you could do that, that would be grand. Make sure you get those paragraphs in, please, on the source which I dished out on Tuesday or Wednesday, Tuesday I think it was. If you get that to me, please, by tomorrow, because then I can mark it over the week. It's going to be cold and miserable this weekend, apparently, so I can mark them this weekend. And again, some of you have been handing in your coursework proposals, which is brilliant. Can the rest of you please get them in by next week? I've not had a chance to look at them yet. I'll have a proper look at them next week. But if you get them in, then you can get yourself started on the course with them, can't you? Okay then, so any problems, send me an email and look out the email I send you a bit later on today with the bits from that book. Okay, cheers.